This is my man Jerry Wise joining us tonight for the live stream. What is it? 8:14. Y'all in my normal group are used to starting a little bit late, but Jerry and his folks they start on time. So in order to be self-differentiated, my brother wants to start on time and get after it. Hello there. I got to get the phone out where I can read it. It's a small. Here we can't read it. Marie. Hi, Marie. So, hey, listen, I want to say a couple of things, and that is sorry that we missed you last week. Brenda and I were supposed to do the show, and we were just tired and pooped out and exhausted and floating around our own issues, and we just couldn't go for the count. And thanks for everybody's graciousness with that. Jerry, why don't you just talk a little bit about sort of what's going on with you, what's going on with life, what's going on with your practice. I gotta run to the bathroom.
I understand.
Don't tell anybody. And then I've got a couple questions I'll funnel to you. But this is the Jerry show tonight, and I'll pop in and pop out. But catch everybody up with yourself.
I will do that. And should I just stay right here, or can I?
Yeah, just sort of center. I'm gonna turn that light off in the back. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Are you live? Are you watching it live? Can you see the comments?
Let me show you.
Yeah, maybe he could show you how to do the comments so you could help me with questions. Well, hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm hoping that you will send in some questions so we can have a question and answer time together. And I'd like to be able to respond to those questions. And gosh, if I move up closer, I might be able to see a little bit of the streaming comments.
We'll get to you, Jerry, in just a little bit.
Great. They're going to help me out with that. Tonight is kind of a night where I wanted to talk about, as I normally do, self-differentiation issues. What does it mean to be a self?
Yeah.
And in our recovery from narcissistic abuse, in our recovery from any abuse, whether that being growing up in an alcoholic family, growing up in a narcissistic parent home, with abuse or any number of things, something that's very important is for us to learn to be ourselves and find ourselves and develop a well-developed self. And that's something we weren't able to do when we grew up. Then we get married, and then maybe we marry a narcissist. Then we get beat down and abused, and all kinds of things happen. Our self gets beat down some more. Our self is not valued. So tonight may be about like being a self. And I brought a few things that I wanted to recommend to some folks. If you're kind of new to the narcissistic abuse community, and those who are part of that club of being narcissistically abused, that there are some good books. I found a couple of good ones that I really liked. One of them is How to Kill a Narcissist by J.H. Simon. And then there's another one by him, Killing Narcissism by J.H. Simon. And if you'd like some kind of primers or beginning books on that, this is kind of a good intro to that. If you've kind of been educated and kind of learned quite a bit about narcissistic abuse, and you know a lot about what the dynamics are regarding that, I think that the last time I did a broadcast, I talked about this book, or at least I know one that I had a broadcast with Mark, and I think it was called The Annihilated Self. And this is Traumatic Narcissism, Relational Systems of Subjugation by Daniel Shaw. It's not always the easiest book to read, but just because it's not an easy book to read doesn't mean it's not a good book to read. And I really think he's very helpful. You can go very slow and read through it. He has some great quotes in there about traumatic narcissism. And then if you're interested in some of the things I'm doing, and we're going to get some questions here in a minute, and I hope you'll send your questions in now. I have a lot of people who talk to me, email me, text me, and say, Jerry, I want to ask these questions. Jerry, I want to ask you this. Well, tonight's a chance for you to ask me. So send in your questions on the live feed there, and we'll get those questions down, and I'll be happy to answer them the best that I can. One of the things, great, that'll help. And that'll kind of give me,
Oh, hey,
will that give me at least, it's a little larger.
look, can you see that? That's
Yeah,
about as
and I
good as
can-
it gets.
Okay, wonderful. That'll help. One of the things, while you're getting me your questions, one of the things, and by the way, thank you for everyone who's saying it's great to have me back. I so appreciate that. I was really looking forward to this. Mark and I have been collaborating on a number of things, and I just really wanted to do tonight and join, and I think I might be doing this once a month to be of help, and also to get some of the message out that I have. I wanted to tell you something new that I've been working on. Is I've got a couple of videos in the pipeline, and one of the videos is entitled Narcissistic Parents and Their Blueprint for Control. And so that's a video I'm working on now.
I've never heard anybody talk on such thing, Jerry.
I don't think they have.
Narcissistic parent and their blueprint for control. Ooh.
So that's coming out very soon, and I'll be doing that video, so you might look for that on the Jerry Wise Relationship Systems YouTube channel. It'll also show up on Family Tree's Life Coaches YouTube channel. And yes, Leslie, there is a blueprint. And I'm going to talk about that blueprint. I saw Leslie mention, is there a blueprint? Yeah, there is. Well, and there's a blueprint for narcissists and their control and being controlling. They have a blueprint that they use. And in fact, some of you may know some of the parts of that blueprint. I wanted to explore it for narcissistic parents and how that affects children, which has kind of been my emphasis, is the family dynamics of narcissism and how it affects families. And I work with a lot of adult children of narcissists, people who grew up in narcissistic homes. Then there's another video I'm working on that you might be interested in. I haven't decided how many keys there are. I was saying 7 keys, but there may be some others. But 7 keys to standing on your own. I have a lot of people who watch my video gaining or learning and strengthening your ability to stand alone. And that video has been very popular. I don't know how many thousands and thousands of views it's had, but it's something a lot of people don't talk about. Certainly, I want to mention that in that video, I'm talking about standing alone, and a lot of times my emphasis is on being a self, standing alone, gaining more separateness or more detachment from others. And sometimes people will complain, and they will talk about, well, Jerry, what about the togetherness part of relationships and connecting? Well, I agree with you that that's a very important component. And it does need to be addressed. But the primary problem is often too much closeness. not enough closeness. For most people, over fusion, over enmeshment is usually the problem, and then gaining some distance due to our over enmeshment or fusion. If we gain some distance in the relationship, we're actually able to be closer to one another. So it takes distance and separateness to be close. And that's the paradox of Bowen family systems, which I talk a lot about, Murray Bowen and his family systems. So does Brene Brown, Jenny Brown, Harriet Lerner, and several other authors are Murray Bowen family systems folks. So when you read their books, that's who it's the same theoretical understanding. And so the standing on your own, I think, is going to be a good video, because people are looking for, how can I stand alone? If you've been in a narcissistically abused relationship or narcissistically abused by parents, often we're going to end up codependent, we're going to end up enmeshed, because that trauma bond creates that enmeshment. And so we want to work on, how can we stand alone? And I don't mean how can we live alone or be alone and we always must be alone. It's the how can we stand alone? Because if we can stand alone, we can stand in a relationship. And that's what's so very important. And I think one of my videos I entitled, A Marriage Requires You to Be Single. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean that to have a marriage, you need singleness in that relationship. Whoops, I think I just kicked that.
So Jerry, we've got some questions coming in that Byron has, but we've also had some folks that sent some in early. So
sure.
And I'll tell you what, I'll feed you these, and then
Okay,
he'll feed
now
you
you're gonna-
those. So I never turned that light off. I'm just sort of a goofball here tonight.
And Mark needs to be a better producer. That's all there is to
I'm-
it. What's going on?
My producing is a little.
I know he's been busy
I think I turned
today.
off the wrong light. No, I turned off the right
No, you
light.
turned off the right light.
Okay.
So
All
that
right.
way we're.
Okay, now, can you scooch
Oh,
just a
yeah.
teeny bit?
Do you want to get in the picture?
Well, just a little bit.
There we go. Mark is here with us.
So Anne Marie sent me a question 2 weeks ago, and then she sent me a question last week, and I wasn't on either show.
Okay.
So, but she says,
Don't make them hard. They can be hard questions.
these are easy. This one's
Oh.
well, this one might be hard. I don't know. But she was tenacious because she came back twice. She says, how does one punch a shark in the nose? It was from a quote
Okay.
about fierceness and punching a shark in the nose. And so basically, how does it, and the rest of the question is, while staying non-reactive, how do you have power if you're in a relationship with a narcissist without being reactive?
Oh, well, that's an excellent question.
Isn't it good?
That's a very good question, and that's a good question for me. That's kind of my area, and so many times we are so used to being reactive that that's the only way we know how to have power. Let me give you another example. I just talked to a client today, and they said, I stay angry because otherwise I don't feel I have any power. And so I stay angry. And then when I'm not angry, I feel like I'm just milquetoast and nothing. So the anger or reactivity and the anger keeps me kind of assertive and doing something for myself, which I know he was absolutely right. I mean, he was being very honest and open about that. The thing is, the trick is, how do we become empowered and how do we become confident and have a well-defined self without punching, anger, reactivity? How do we do that? And I think that's where a self-differentiation comes in. Because the more we have a well-defined self, the more we deal with our anxiety, which comes from our family of origin, which flows through us like electricity, even today, and say we have too much anxiety. Because see, that anxiety that's present in the family of origin is connected right to our limbic system, the fight or flight system. And when that anxiety goes up, flight or fight is ignited. And now I want to punch, I want to be angry, I want to be reactive. And now I feel powerful, so to speak. But actually, many times my reactivity just maintains the status quo. It doesn't change anything. It just maintains the status quo for the system. Now I've just gone from 180 degrees of being calm or compliant to 180 degrees being mad and frustrated. 180 degrees from zero is still sick. Sick is sick. It's just the opposite is not the answer. And I think I just read that recently in one of my studies I was working. We always feel the opposite is the solution. The opposite isn't the solution. The opposite is 90 degrees, not 180 or 180. So it's the 90 degrees. So we then work on how can I work on that anxiety which pushes my limbic system, and that's done through family systems work, inner child work, and understanding how relationships work to where you can begin calmer and calmer. I remember a client that I had recently. She may even be watching tonight. She's from Kansas. She probably knows what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to tell you anymore. And I know how much she says she can't believe how much calmer she is now. And when you are calm, you can still be powerful. It doesn't take reactivity to be powerful. You can be calm and be powerful. In fact, that's the most powerful you can be. Not reactive powerful, but calm powerful. And so I work with clients to help them stay calm or work on towards staying calm while they're being mature and they're being their age and acting in a mature way. And that's a big prescription. That's a big task.
Thank you, Jerry.
I didn't go too long.
No. A lot of these subjects overlap, so if you get to preaching, just keep preaching real good, brother. So this is from Tessa. She says, I've dealt with narcissists pretty much all around me. However, the scariest ones that she encounters are in the workplace.
Yeah.
Used to work with me, so you know.
No.
I lost jobs, been wrongly slandered and lied about, thank you, and left jobs and couldn't take all the games and the abuse at work because of them. My question is, how does one protect oneself from besides just staying away and keeping low key? Jerry's been studying this for decades and decades. He used to always share with me about a book from generation to generation using Bowen principles in a church. With the pastor. We know that there's no narcissists in church, don't we?
None. There's no narcissists at church.
Yeah. So you've consulted with pastors, you've been a pastor, you've worked in other situations. How do you be self-differentiated if your workplace is filled with narcissists and you don't want to just lay low and be invisible, because that's a bit of a powerless position? So what are your thoughts about another good question?
Well, and it's a very good question. And I work with, I've got a number of clients right now who have narcissists who they work with. And it's very, very troubling and very difficult, especially if they're in a position of authority. And if they're a supervisor or someone over you. It's hard enough if they're a peer. And then when you add supervisor to that, then it really gets crazy. And I think here's what I try to assess, and maybe this is a way to help you. Because narcissists are on a continuum. Not everybody is the same in terms of narcissism. You can be a 10, you can be a 1. I know a lot of people disagree with that. They think you're either a narcissist or not a narcissist. Well, I tend to believe there's a continuum because human beings are very complex. Now, I believe there are 10s out there. I have no doubt. I mean, there are 10s. And maybe you've been dealing with 10s, but not everybody deals with 10s. There could be a 4 who's a narcissist. There could be a 1 or a 0 that's more narcissistic traits. So when someone comes to me and says they've got a narcissist at a boss, who's a boss, or a narcissist who is a coworker, I always try to assess one of two things, or maybe one of three things. I don't know. Number one, do I need to lay low because I have to have the job and I've got to survive and I need to keep my head under the radar and head from being chopped off? So do I need to be in a powerless position just for survival? Because sometimes, I mean, if you're in a concentration camp, you better not have an attitude. That's all I'm saying. You really better. I'd watch your self-differentiation in those situations.
That's a bad place to have an attitude.
That's a bad place to have an attitude. I'm not saying workplaces are concentration camps. However, there are some that are quite mean and they can be very costly for you career-wise, job-wise, and cost you a lot. And they can be abusive. So, do we need to stay low and I have to endure this? What do I need to do to endure this? And how do I need to change, get a tougher skin? What do I need to do? Second of all, which is another extreme, which is what about I need to leave? I need to cut off. I need to go somewhere else. This is not tenable. I need a new environment. They're not going to change. I've tried everything I can. It's not going to work. Then I want to assess, okay, now, but does this situation require more self-differentiation and you haven't been utilizing that? And that's when I say self-differentiation, differentiation, I can't even say the term. When I say that, I mean all that comes with that, which includes knowledge of how the system works so that we can be as clever as the system is, so that we can out-crazy the crazy system. That's what Donald Williamson in his book, Intimacy Paradox, that's what Generation to Generation Edwin Friedman states in his book. You out-crazy the system. And that requires more self-differentiation. And I do think things we can do with either narcissists or very troubled and troubling co-workers that we have. So I try to assess, do we need to cut off or do we need more self-differentiation? Which do we need? And sometimes people don't have that right. I think there are a lot of people who may have cut off from their family of origin, for example, when actually they just needed more self-differentiation. Then there are others who might be in there trying to self-differentiate, and they probably ought to go no contact. So we want to really assess what's needed, what's the prescription for this problem. So everyone's situation can be different, and there are ways that we can learn to cope with the narcissists at work. Though I don't have a magic wand and can make all narcissists, as one client said this morning, we need to put all narcissists on a boat and take them to an island. And I said, well, I'm for that if we can get that done.
We need a whole continent.
We'd need a whole continent to probably do it.
Yeah. So out crazy the crazy system.
And that takes some flexibility and real confidence and strength to out crazy the crazy system.
Yeah.
But you can be successful.
Yeah. Okay, we have a longer question from a woman named Liz.
Oh boy. Okay.
And then we've got some that they've sent in tonight. So she says, "Hi Mark, I'm having issues with my narcissist who won't let me leave, and even with no contact, he always finds a way to get me in the same ways. police, the warrant for his arrest, telling people, having pictures. None of this has helped me at all. I do think this person is above the law. Whenever I succumb to his demand to deal with his silence and mind games, he uses his predatory eyes to call on other supply right in front of me, like to make me deal with his womanizing ways, womanizing eyes. Women smile at him for his stare all the time, and it's this constant torture. I've ended up in it a million times, and a million times he doesn't leave me alone. Any advice or words of wisdom to help me cope with what I'm being silently tortured, and I'll be grateful, since no one knows narcissistic abuse that I'm working with. I've been planning on doing something drastic like leaving the state I'm living in and disappearing. But I have kids with my previous relationship and my ex-husband I met before the narcissist. It's something I feel I have to do and try to figure out how to leave and erase the insecurity that has been pressed upon me by this dark triad man I was with for the past 5 years. Do you have any advice? I'm actually thinking of studying law to help people who've been ignored by the law by someone who seems to be above it, by his family association, but not sure of that approach yet. You can talk about this on the show. I welcome you to bring this up to other women and men who might be experiencing the same dilemma. Also, what do you suggest for self-care in recovery? There's an interesting practice of law, Jerry. Go ahead.
Is she living with him? Is this her
No,
husband?
it doesn't appear to be.
Is her a boyfriend or something?
Yeah, so wouldn't it be interesting if, in response to this avalanche, this epidemic in our culture, if a whole new branch of law came up called dealing with predatory, malignant narcissists, put that on a business card as a lawyer, and you got one shark eating another shark. I just sort of
That
was a
would
little
be-
bit tickled by that. But I know
that
that's
would
a
be
tough
tickling.
question, but what are your thoughts, Jerry, about that difficult situation?
Yeah, and that's a difficult situation, and those are hard cases. And again, knowing more details would help me give a better answer, but I can talk in general. And I think actually there are some attorneys who are beginning to get more knowledgeable about narcissists. And in fact, I recently had a couple who were quite wealthy, and they got a divorce. And it was quite what the wife, who was the narcissist, was able to make the husband do in the divorce was pretty amazing. And the attorneys were well aware of narcissistic divorce problems. And so there are attorneys who are getting more educated about these difficulties and actually help my client to do the right thing with this narcissistic female in their divorce. When you're talking about that we're not going to change the behavior and the other person, as you well know, and they're going to continue to behave in ways that are hurtful, painful, even feeling torturous. So one of the things that we have to work on is to toughen our skin and not give our power away emotionally when someone is doing something inappropriate. In other words, if we have a spouse or a partner or boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever who cannot keep from flirting in front of us or putting us down in front of another female or something like that, we don't want to give it too much credence. I understand in normal situations that would be painful. I understand how painful it could be in normal situations, but we can't use normal rules for dealing with that. We need to understand this is someone who is sick, this is someone who's not well, and they're doing and saying these crazy things, and I don't want to give my power over to them to upset me so much. So we want to work on our sense of self so that we are not as affected by what they say and what they do, because this is what they say and do. We can decide whether that's going to be torturous for us or not. Now I understand I don't, there was a long question, so there was a lot of details in there, and I'm not sure what all the details were, but I know you were trying to think, well, maybe I should move away, or maybe I should. And you're right, if we have other relationships that we have to deal with, then it's difficult to just pick up and go, and that can be very hard. But the main thing I'd want to be working with you on is how can we help you build up your sense of power, giving them less power, you having a stronger, thicker skin, so that they don't hurt you as badly. And you are able to stand alone and stand by yourself. And it doesn't matter what he does. Because again, if you've if you've got a child who is, well, here's the one thing: a J.C. Penney's, and I have nothing against J.C. Penney's. J.C. Penney's clerk says something, and they say something to me that's mean, bad, something about me. Gosh, you're an ugly old man, or whatever. I'm not going to be as troubled by that, because J.C. Penney's clerk, I don't care what they say. It doesn't matter to me. I already have kind of a filter, and I have kind of a buffer about that. So it wouldn't bother me. I'd go, well, I don't know what's wrong with them. But yet when it comes to someone like our partner, our boyfriend, or something like that, then all of a sudden all the buffers and all the filters all go. And we want to keep those filters and buffers. Not to inhibit intimacy, but so that we don't give our power all away, so we stay connected with ourselves. So I don't know if that was helpful in your answering your question. There was a lot to your question. I probably could have read it more and maybe even helped a little bit.
With the legal,
I do see somebody saying, "Preach it, Jerry."
preach it, brother. With the legal stuff, I mean, with your approach, the family systems approach, you're always referring people back to their sense of self
Exactly.
and the power that they have in their own being. So here's another question. This is from Jackie, one of our regulars. She says, "Are most
I hear Jackie a lot.
narcissists insanely jealous?"
Well, that's a very good question, because I've had some that were and some that weren't. So, maybe most are. I don't know.
You can't say that all are.
Yeah, I can't say that all are, because I know some that are so full of themselves, they don't have any jealousy. They don't care. All they care about what they're getting. If you're, they don't care. If you're going to go somewhere else, I'll go find somebody else. I don't care about what you're doing, because I don't have empathy or compassion about that. Now, I think there are others that get very wounded and can get very wounded, and their shame be triggered. Excuse me. And that they can be triggered by jealousy and want to control you fully. And so they don't want you to have any other relationships, any other friends, any other anything, because they can't handle sharing influence with you. Much like I found, like pastors, for example, when they're referring clients to therapists, pastors can have a hard, not all pastors, but pastors can have a hard time sharing influence. They don't want to share that influence with that therapist because that therapist might tell that church member something they don't like. Well, the narcissist can say, I don't want my wife going and being friends with the neighbors because who knows what ideas they might put in her head. So they can't share influence, and I suppose that's somewhat of a jealousy and a controlling side of narcissism. So are all, I don't know if we're all, some, yes.
Hey, here's a question. I might weigh in on it briefly because it hits on my personal issue. You can have a 7-Up break there, or a Sprite break, whatever.
Diet,
that is.
Sprite,
Diet
7-Up.
7-Up. So Alexander writes in. He says, "I feel like I'll never be able to heal from having been abused by my mother. Instead of loved, it just caused such a profound wound that I feel will never heal, no matter how much time I take." So Alexander,
It's Alexander.
we sort of agree with you, but maybe the emphasis is on the different syllable. We understand how deep wounds are. The wound I got from my mother, I don't expect is ever going to be anywhere close to 100% healed. It's just too deep, and I was an infant and a toddler. But in the tone of your question, my friend, there's a hopelessness. There's a spiraling and sort of, we're defeated and there's no hope and let's sort of eat worms kind of a thing, and we've all been there. I'm not criticizing you for that.
Sure.
But our message here is we embrace the wound, we heal the wound, but then you have choices then too. I was over at the cafe the other day and I read a quote from the wall from a guy named J.C. Watts, congressman, former football player, and he had somehow a quote in between Mother Teresa and Gandhi. If you ever get a quote between Mother Teresa and Gandhi, then you are one wise fellow. But
You're right. You've arrived.
But he said the past can leave a mark on us, and then he said, or we can go out and leave a mark on the past, and that would be more of a counter-dependent approach. What we would say is, the past leaves a mark on us all, and for some people that mark is more profound than it is for other people. It's deeper. But what we would say, and you can then go out in the world and thrive and be happy and ultimately be in a good enough relationship. So talk about the depth of the wound, but also the nature of the hope involved in recovery, Jerry.
Oh, absolutely. And many of us have been deeply wounded. And I work with folks who have been very, very wounded in their lives. From parents, from partners, from spouses, and it's been traumatic. And so, Alexander, I know it can be difficult. Also, when we feel very hopeless and we feel like we wouldn't be able to change that wound, then you want to make sure you check out, is this the wound or could I be depressed? So we want to be careful about our depressiogenic thinking, which is very negative too. And so we want to make sure we don't get too depressed with the wound. So the wound can be very deep. I believe that a lot of times, a lot of folks do a lot of learning about the wound, but they're not sure how to do the healing about the wound. And in family systems, the notion is Insight doesn't produce change. Understanding something may not produce change. And so a lot of people can have I just talked to a client again today, and it just happened to be what we're talking about right now. All these clients talk today, and they are on these topics.
It's fortuitous.
Fortuitous. And she was talking about, she has spent years understanding her family, but her family is still in her. So she says, I know everything about my family. I know everything about what happened. I said, I have no doubt that you know everything about your family and the pain and the trauma, but it doesn't sound like you've healed through or worked through that pain or those struggles. And that's where it takes cognitive and affective healing, both here and here. And we need both. I'm not against learning something about anything. We do need to learn cognitively about many things and about our growing up. But we need both of those to really heal. So I try to work on both sides of it. The cognitive and systems way of thinking, cognitive thinking, and also the affective and healing part of how can we let go of our pain? How can we let go of our wounds? How can we heal our wounds? And then, as I've said, and it's never too late to have a happy childhood. Now, why would I say that? It's never too late to have a happy childhood? Because the little child is still within you. What are you doing with that child who was wounded now? They're waiting on you. They're waiting on you to love them and to care about them and to. So we can keep waiting on the wound to heal while we're sitting back not taking care of our inner child, and then we wonder why we don't heal. Well,
Time does not heal all wounds, does it, Jerry?
No. Time alone doesn't heal all
Sometimes
wounds.
people can stay frozen in their wounds for many decades.
Lifetime.
Yeah. Some of the famous gurus and life coaches are really focusing on recovery, and they're focusing on family of origin issues. Nowadays, when you go see Tony Robbins, he comes up with the microphone to do an intervention in his thing, and Jerry, guess what the first question he asks? He says, which parent did you crave the most love from, your dad or your mom? He asks that to everybody. And what I like about some of the life coach people is we therapists by nature, we do tend to really, we really focus on the wound and the past. And somebody like Jerry, who's more of a life coach, he's about empowering people. I just put Jerry in the same sentence with Tony Robbins.
Wow.
He's about empowering us to transcend the wound, have it not define us forever, and then to have us go on and prosper, even if you're prospering a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, eventually that really, it adds up. Did you find a question?
Yeah, well, I wanted to say to Soren, who wrote, I'm going to be doing a whole video on that topic of going without love and approval. And it's standing on your own, and I've got a whole series of things to share about that. So rather than share it tonight, I'm going to do that in a video. So I will be answering that. Someone also asked here, how do we achieve that singleness in a relation?
You brought that up a few
relationship.
minutes ago, and she asked that a while
Annie
ago.
Chica?
Yeah.
Right. We didn't answer that.
We did not.
Oh, okay.
So take a run at it.
And I think that's a very good question, because a relationship has both separateness and togetherness in it. It has both we-ness and I-ness in it. And having that singleness, it's important that we learn more I-ness rather than so much we-ness. And so that's a part of that finding more singleness. And really what I'm talking about is to help a marriage have a more well-developed self. Work on having a more well-developed self. That will help the marriage. That will help the relationship. Now, there are times in which having a more well-developed self is going to hurt the marriage because the marriage is not stable or healthy. And if you add wellness or selfness to it, it can really start to crack and shatter. That's one of the dangers of doing couples or family or couples therapy, that therapists will share that with, that's one of the risks. If you come for couples therapy, it might work out where you decide to not stay together because you've gotten more clarity. So that's one of the risks. But I think in most relationships, if we can work on having a more well-defined self, that will bring more calmness, clarity, and healing to the relationship. There was
a question from Jackie. I think it was on this page. She re-asked it. Let's see, Jackie, is it better to confront a narcissist or to just ignore them? Confront or ignore?
Confront or ignore. Oh, well, that's always, and again, it depends. You know, it depends on the situation and what it's going to cost you to confront them, what it's going to cost you, how much you're able to tolerate, how much you're able to stand firm, how confident are you, how independent are you when you're going to confront this person. If, you know, just like I say, if you're in a concentration camp, I'd be real hesitant about yelling at one of the guards. You know, I just really wouldn't want to do that. A narcissistic guard, I think I'd probably keep my mouth shut. So it depends on how dependent I am in the relationship. And so instead of deciding, do I confront them or do I not, I would want to work on how can I become less dependent on the relationship. Then I can sort out what am I going to do about confronting them or not confronting them. I hope Jackie, this is Jackie. Is it better to confront a narcissist or just ignore them? You know, I'm always for ignoring if you can ignore them. It depends on how pretzeled and intertwined we are with them in the relationship. I always like to ignore people that are unhealthy or narcissistic or selfish, so I really like doing that. Much better than confronting them, because often for the narcissist, a confrontation is not going to gain them insight. You know, I wish it would, but I just don't think they're going to gain insight from the confrontation.
And sometimes it'll give them attention, it'll give them drama. If you get reactive, then you get to be labeled as the bad guy. You know, sometimes it's like a very well laid trap to be avoided.
Well, and I think one of the things about that we learn with family systems is we look at the dynamics of what's going on, and you decide how is speaking going to affect the system, how is not speaking up or speaking going to affect the system. So we want to look at the dynamics of, and all the dynamics of what's going on and the patterns, so we know whether is this the time to speak or is this the time to be silent. Because sometimes being silent is more powerful than speaking.
Many times.
So sometimes speaking is more powerful than, but you have to know what is the lay of the land, what's the map, not just what's the right technique. You know, is the technique I should always confront narcissists? No, I wouldn't do that. Is the right technique always to ignore them? I wouldn't do that. We want to zoom out and see the entire system and then decide what's the right prescription
Yeah.
for those.
There was a situation about a year and a half ago, where Family Tree was being attacked pretty vigorously on YouTube, and you know, the worst thing in the world we could have done was to ever talk about it. And you'll never hear me give any specifics about that. We just ignored it and ignored it and ignored it and ignored it. You know what? We didn't really care. You know, if you know who you are, if you're solid in your sense of self, you know you're a good person, you know you didn't do bad things. People can say the awfulest things about you. You could sleep like a baby and not be upset about it. So, you got another question, or?
I just wanted to say, we've talked a lot, or people will talk about how love covers a multitude of sins, the biblical notion of that. I always say neutrality and calmness covers a multitude of sins. And neutrality and calmness really is the goal.
Yeah.
Because then you can think, and then you're not reacting, and you can actually maneuver in the relationship much more flexibly.
Yeah.
Than if you're anxious, reactive. You're going to pull the wrong string. You're going to pull the wrong button. You're going to push the wrong button. You're going to do all that. And
I don't have too many Mary Bowen stories, Jerry, like you do, but I like to tell this one in terms of a good therapist who has a solid sense of self and who's in recovery and who understands family systems. The main thing they're gonna, the starting point is they're gonna provide safety. And so one day, Mary Bowen, Jerry's, mentor, who Jerry actually has his autograph, actually, from way back when.
Actually, yes.
So one day, Dr. Bowen was working with a real advanced couple. And an advanced couple, they come in, they don't even look at the therapist. They just go to talking to each other, they face each other. And this couple, they didn't really need any intervention. Dr. Bowen sat there the whole 45, 50 minutes, didn't say one word. And then the fellow was writing him a big fat check and said, Dr. Bowen, I have a question for you. What'd you do to earn this big fat check I'm writing you? He said, I provided safety and calm.
Right. That's worth all that money.
It is.
It's worth every dime of that.
It's priceless.
And he knew, or I've even said, they said, well, or Jerry, I'm not sure I got what I wanted today, because I wanted you to answer this question. And I said, well, you're paying me to not answer it. You're paying me to not answer it.
Right.
Because there may be better. Well, let me give you a good example. When they come and say, Jerry, I just feel so much shame. How do I get rid of this shame? Do you know I need to be real careful about how I answer that question? Because it's not about how. It's a wrong question.
Everybody loves to ask the how.
Everybody loves that. It's not how, it's when. And we don't believe we have the power for when. We just think if we just have the right technique, and I know it's not the technique. Here's 3 steps to getting rid of all of your shame. Now, if I could do that, I'd be rich on a beach somewhere, and that'd be great if I could just provide da-da-da. But what I like to do is go, wait a minute, I want to help you change your paradigm that has you ask that question. And then I want to help you change your theory and your paradigm about yourself in terms of you empowering yourself to let go of the shame and accepting yourself. That's what I want to do. But yes, you're right, I didn't answer your question. And I hope you don't go see any coach or a therapist who will answer that question for you. I hope they won't.
Sometimes in a therapy question, somebody will ask me a question and I'm struck mute because it's a loaded question. You know, it's a triangled question that somehow indirectly shames the spouse, and I'm like, you know, because you can't answer because you don't want to be drawn into the triangle and manipulated.
Exactly. Questions are. I always want to know what the question, where it comes from.
Right. What's the wound? What's the background story?
Well, in fact, I've had people the very first say. In fact, I had recently, and I said one, and I don't know whether to share this or not.
You're not going to show them your shoes again, are you?
No, well, hey, I can show you my shoes. I always seem to do that on the program. I don't know why that is. But someone will start out the first question and say, Jerry, what do you think about guilt-ridden parents?
It's loaded in some way.
It's loaded in some way. Why do you ask this? I mean, tell me where that comes from, because the question comes from somewhere. And that's what's more important than the question itself, is where it comes from,
Right.
not the answering of the
Right.
questions.
Right.
We keep thinking the answers are what's important. In systems thinking, the question is what's important.
Right.
If you can, problem formulation and problem questions are the holy grail, not the answer. Because if you can get the right question, you'll have the right answer.
Right.
And so it's a search for the right questions.
Right. So Northern Light has a question, and it's not a real, I don't believe a strong family systems question. It's along a different path, but I'm interested in your answer anyway, Jerry.
Okay.
She says, is dream analysis a good way of getting in touch with your inner child? And then they ask, what are good ways to hear from? See if you want to hear from your inner child, you know, that's inside you and wanting to talk to you. So I guess there's two questions there. What
about
how do you
dream?
dreams, and then how do you hear from that little rascal inside you sometimes?
Those are two very good questions. There are the use of dreams and dream analysis has been a healing part of Christianity for centuries.
Christianity.
Christianity, dreams have always been important. And if you look in the Bible, it's always, and there's some very good pastoral counseling and spiritual guidebooks. And I can't think of the one that I really thought was good. So I apologize, and maybe I can post that later. But it's on dreams and healing. And so dreams have been used in Christianity for centuries to do healing and to grow and know about self. And so I definitely believe she was asking about, where was the dream?
Hearing from the inner child.
Is that a way to hear from the inner child? Yeah. Is that what the dream question was about?
Yeah.
Oh, certainly. I think, and in fact, what I do, and different people use dreams in different ways. So it's okay to use dreams in lots of different ways. Interpret them. What I like to do is kind of take the person into the dream. Let's go into it. And let's go into that dream that you just described to me. And let's find out what you're feeling, hearing, seeing, if we go into that dream right now. And that might be the way I might approach that.
Nice.
Now, with the inner child part, how do we hear from that inner child? And I think that's always tricky. We're always trying to learn, how can we hear ourselves. I've got a client that I've been working with who feels pretty numb. and has felt numb about her inner child for I don't know how long. And she's very, just very difficult to get a hold of that inner child of hers. I have used things and tried to help people by think of this as a child of yours or some other person's child you know at that age going through that. How do you think they would feel? That's an indirect way to try to identify how you might feel. Another approach would be, okay, if you can do the empty chair and put the little child over on the empty chair. Talk to the empty chair, ask things about the empty chair, or ask, is the little Mary in you, do you know what the little Mary in you is saying right now? Do you know what she wants? What does little Mary want inside you right now? What is she feeling? And they may go, well, I don't know. Okay, that's fine. But do you know when somebody says, I don't know? Now, you're not going to like this, everybody. I'm just telling you, you're not going to like this, because I didn't like it either. When somebody says, I don't know, I always have them change it to, I'm not ready to know.
I like that.
And it's okay to not be ready to know. Well, I don't know what my inner child is feeling right now. I don't know what they're saying. That's fine. That's okay. I just don't know. But let's turn it into, I'm not ready to know yet. I'm not ready to share that yet. And maybe that inner child has been so abused, she or he may not want to come out right now.
Right.
Because they don't feel safe.
They come up when they're ready.
When they're ready. So it's okay to say, I'm not ready to know that. Or people will say, I feel numb. And just like today, I said, well, can you say, I'm not yet ready to not feel numb? Ooh, and that she went,
Right.
What?
It
What?
gives them permission.
It
to
gives
be
them
where they're
permission to be where they're at.
Yeah.
And it gives them hope that they could actually give up the numbness and actually feel, which they can. But there's some real reasons why they wouldn't. And then I even explore, okay, if you're numb, if I waved a magic wand and you were no longer numb, what would be the downsides? Oh, then they start going, oh, well, my gosh, I'd probably go stark raving mad. I'd probably be overwhelmed with feelings. I'd probably feel unsafe. I would be vulnerable. Well, then maybe it makes sense that you'd be numb. Maybe that'd make total sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now we start to melt the numbness.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting that you mentioned the using the empty chair, because I did a video a couple weeks ago. I did some empty chair work with my mama, and then I did some empty chair work with little bitty Mark, and in 2 days, on the 26th of April, is the 3rd year anniversary of my shattering. I'm gonna be 3 now, Jerry.
gonna be 3.
I'm a 3-year-old. And I'm not gonna do the empty chair with my former narcissistic abuser, but I am gonna make a video on how you can do it. I think mine's gonna be a little raw, and the first 2 were really raw. In a lot of my videos, when I work on stuff, I end up crying, and somebody who didn't know better might say, well, there's that mushy crying little boy therapist guy, and what they don't know is that's actually a real sign of strength, that you can summon up the wounded little kid if you're happening to work on a piece of work. So look for that on Thursday. I think I'm going to have time I'm going to teach you how to have a conversation with the person who narcissistically abused you. You can still be no contact, and I'll have probably anywhere from 15 to 20 to 30 different ways of going about how to do that. It's going to be very healing, and it could give you a voice and a sense of closure, but you don't have to actually talk with them, So I would stay away from that. Okay,
That's
so
great.
Kate Nadine has a question here. She says, how do you respond to a narcissist that's still abusing targets and they stay married to a narcissist for 25 years while the pathological narcissist abuses other family members? So you see the narcissist in the family, and they dished out their load on you, and now you maybe are seeing them attack a sibling or a grandchild or a child. And all these are how questions. Everybody wants to know how, as if you can just tell them how to do it and boom, they go do it and it's done. But I know you'll flip it around and talk about the underpinnings of it.
Sure.
So
Now,
what are your
how
thoughts
and why
on that?
does a spouse of a narcissist who is abusing other targets, stay married to the narc for over 25 years, while the pathological narcissist abuse other family members?
This is where you want to know the rest of the story.
I mean, there's a lot,
yeah,
how, right, why and how does a spouse of a narcissist abusing other targets stay married to the... Well, I mean, that's like saying, why does someone who's abusive stay married to the abuser? And there can be lots of reasons why we do that. It's much more scary to leave, even though the rest of it would say, well, I wouldn't want to be abused. I wouldn't want to be physically abused. I wouldn't stay. Well, it depends on if your paradigm says it's scarier to leave. I also believe that there's probably a lot more to this question and story as well, in terms of why they are staying, because a narcissist will definitely find other targets and abuse other targets. And often that person, the spouse, will stay with them because they're damaged, wounded, don't have much of a sense of self, feel worthless, feels like this is the best they can get. They could be fearful, they could be financially dependent, and then they just have to put up with the narcissist who abuses other family members. At least that's what they can be feeling and doing. I know I had one client that I worked with for 3 years while she prepared and planned her escape from her narcissistic and abusive husband or baby's father. And she spent a lot of time preparing for that, and she made a successful exit. And that was, she was really courageous, and it was very difficult. There are ways to leave, there is support that you can get to leave, but I also know that relationships and families, that can be very, very difficult when we get intertwined with the narcissist, with our family members, financially, and it all becomes a very difficult pretzel, where it's all twisted and turned together. And I think that's that's some of the work that I do with people, is people come and they come like a pretzel. And my job is to help them unpretzel themselves. That's really what self-differentiation is about, to unpretzel themselves. And that isn't easy to do. Or like they come in a knot. Well, have you ever had a knot, say thread, and it's got a knot in it? Do you know how difficult it is to get that knot out of there, and how patient you have to be, and how careful you have to kind of pull, and until finally you can work it out, and then the pretzel or the thread goes straight. But boy, it's a lot of little working at it, and that's what some of the coaching and work that we do to help someone do that. So it can be a slow process um, in doing that work. Mark, have we got about 6 minutes left? Is that
You know, we started late, Jerry. If we want to go a little longer, we could. It's up to you, brother.
okay? Um, let's see here. We should put a vote out there. Do you want me to go longer? No, I shouldn't. We shouldn't. Because you would. Some people would say yes, yes, yes. Stay here another 4 hours.
Some people would stay 4 hours.
Yeah, let's do another 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I have yes, and I have. Well, the I was going to. Oh, I know. I was going to talk about. If you're interested in maybe a little preview of the video, I thought I might give you a
Do
little
that.
preview.
We've got 20 minutes. So
Okay.
just-
Now I could stand to take a little break.
you want to take a
Could
little
you
break?
take just a second?
Yeah.
While I take
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
little
yeah,
break,
yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
right back.
Take a little break. Hey, y'all.
And I'll give a preview.
So I have missed you all. Good night, Diana. I'll be on the show next Tuesday, and then the week after that is, I believe, yeah. We'll be, Renda and I, one or both of us will be doing the show next week. And then in 3 weeks, it's our Renda and I's wedding anniversary. And so we haven't had a break in a long while since our honeymoon, and we've been hitting it real hard. So we're actually going to take a little trip for our to celebrate our anniversary in 3 weeks. But we'll be back talking at you. What's going on? What is going on? It's been a year. We've been married a year. Time flies when you're having fun. Today the staff at Family Tree met. We had big Chinese lunch, and we just were authentic. We did a little storming, we call it. Thank you for the happy anniversary wishes, and some really good news. If you guys didn't hear about it already, but Renda, there was a hold on her master's in social work, but she finally did get a decent test to take. She got her master's in social work. She walks in next week to pick her master's in social work up. She's going to apply for her licensing, and when we move into our new building on September 1st, she is going to be right there with us and in the building and taking local clients, doing marital counseling, as well as doing more long distance work using video. So Renda's growing as a wife, and she's growing as a coach, and now she's growing as a therapist, and we're really excited. So give them a little piece there, Jerry. Give them a little snack.
Let me
little
give you a
Scooby
little,
snack.
just a little. I might share some things. These are not all well developed, but I thought I'd give you a little preview. I wonder if I can preview. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll wait on the preview on that one. The narcissistic parent and their blueprint for control. That's a video that I'm going to be doing here shortly. This one is the keys to standing on your own. And here's some of the things that I will be talking about in that video, and they may be of interest to you. Thinking systems because it's very important to think systems rather than think techniques. And again, a lot of the self-help books talk about techniques you can do, but they don't talk about how you view relationships in a different way, and how we operate in them. They just say do A, B, and C, and that should help you. Well, not if the paradigm's broken. It doesn't matter what techniques you use. So we need a good map. Second of all, we want to, if we're going to stand on our own, we have to take responsibility for our own patterns and what we're bringing to the relationship, and taking responsibility for ourselves. And that's about growing up as well. Resolving our inner child yearnings and needs without doing it through other people. And we tend to do that a lot when we don't stand on our own. We want others to take care of our needs. We want others to take care of us. We want others to treat us right. We want others to understand us, etc., etc. And so we put that burden on the relationship, and then that's when relationships tend to blow up. We want to avoid triangles. Triangles is not standing on your own. Triangles being pulled into an unhealthy relationship situation. So we want to avoid triangles and exit triangles. Most people are dealing with relationship and emotional triangles, from their childhood that still affect them today. And I had a client that I was working with today who's still stuck in a triangle with her family, which mimics and is reproduced in her relationship with her husband. And so she gains insight into that. And also, if she can resolve that triangle, this triangle will often dissolve. We want to work towards emotional autonomy. We want to have that well-defined self part of us. We want to explore and develop a self and learn how I operate. What do I want? What do I need? Not in a selfish way, but in a self-aware way. That's what we want to learn. It's not about selfishness, it's about selfness. And that's different. We want to be more strategic in how we interact, assess, and plan our actions in relationships. And that takes time. Most of the time we just react and are reactive, and then we act, but we didn't assess, we didn't plan, we didn't decide how we were going to approach this, or what the consequences would be, or how to deal with the resistance we get, or how to deal with what happens when they react back to us. And we don't do any of that thoughtfulness in planning in our relationships. Learning how to show up with your true self, which is kind of a Brene Brown notion. She has a book out called Braving the Wilderness, which is excellent. And then there's being that we are human and be human. Remember that you're human. So many people who have grown up in dysfunctional relationships, had narcissistic parents, dysfunctional families, they don't know that they're human. They have perfectionism as a problem. They always feel like they're falling short, and they don't know how human they are, and it's okay to be human. And then also belonging to ourselves. It's very important that we belong to ourselves. How many of us don't belong to ourselves? You know, how many of us don't really connect with ourselves? Some of us don't even like ourselves. Well, that's certainly not belonging to ourselves. And so we have to belong to ourselves and love ourselves. And back to, I mentioned again, don't try techniques, struggle with theory or paradigm change. And that's, again, techniques are only going to take you so far. I'm not against techniques. Sometimes there are some tricks or techniques that can be helpful. But I think they're only limited in how they can help you if you're not going to change your whole paradigm about the way you see relationships, see yourselves, and do relationships and life differently. And family systems is about helping you change that paradigm. There's a very good book if you want to know about, and I've mentioned this before, The Dance of Intimacy by Harriet Lerner. And that's an excellent book that gives you the basics about how to change that paradigm in relationships. And I think she does a great job. She has some wonderful quotes in here. And I think here's one of her things that she wrote. I wrote in the back of the book: staying narrowly focused on a problem or arguing will not achieve greater intimacy. In other words, if we stay too narrowed in, we won't be able to achieve intimacy. We want to move out and not just stay over focused on one small part or problems, which I've also talked with couples about and said, hey, what I want you to do this week is leave your problems here with us. Leave it here. Leave it here with me. And you go do the other part of your relationship this week. Now we're not narrowly over focusing and being over serious about the problems. And then they come back the next week saying, gosh, we had a really good week. We didn't shove anything under the carpet. We didn't deny anything. Nothing's being lied about. We're going to address these problems. But you can't just keep over focusing on problems and expect the relationship to get better. So I think I'm just about out of steam. And I appreciate Mark hosting tonight and helping me. Also, my personal assistant Byron was with us tonight, helping
He
with.
was helpful. He came up with quite a few questions.
He came up with
for
quite a
us.
few questions, and I appreciate him being here. I want to tell you all I really enjoyed being here tonight.
I know
hope it
everybody enjoyed having you. We don't know the exact date, but probably it'll be about a month-ish. Jerry will be back, and we don't know whether he'll be coming over to Renda and I's condo or whether he'll meet us here, but he'll come ready to share from his unique place in the world, his unique voice about many of these same issues that you guys struggle with, but he flips the problem on its ear and looks at it from a different direction. Of course, it's very helpful, and it's genius, and it's a blessing. So love you guys. Thank you all for watching. Send this along the way to other people so they can benefit from it too. We miss you guys, and I'll see you guys next week, and Jerry will see you in about a month or so.
Love you all.
All right.
Thanks for watching tonight.
God bless.
I appreciate it.
Take care.